Hi, welcome to the Roundtable. I'm your host, Steven, and today I'll be talking about albums that will be celebrating their 25th anniversary in 2023. We'll start off with a little known band called Union. This was made up of former Kiss guitarist Bruce Kulick and former Motley Crue and former Dead Daisies singer John Corabi. They made, I think, two albums together. I really like their sound. They never really had a chance to get their footing. I don't think radio backed them up too much, and unfortunately, these guys fell by the wayside. But there was a lot of promise there, and I definitely would like to have heard more of them. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But still, good albums from these guys. Second up, we have an album that may hurt people's, but Pilgrim from Eric Clapton, which came out, I believe, in on March 12th, 1998. Different sound, produced a lot by Babyface. So it is a little bit different than what we're used to from Eric Clapton. A lot more R&B. But what I like, there's a lot more original material on here because Clapton is kind of like Rod Stewart and like these guys, they do a lot of covers. This is a lot of original material. What I think this album gets forgotten, well, what people forget about this album, I think for me, this is where Clapton finally acknowledges that he's a singer. If you listen to his other albums, he knows he's a guitar god to everybody. And he just sings on his songs, but he's not a singer. This is, he kind of went, yeah, I'm a singer. And if you listen to Pilgrim, the title track, the vocal performance on there is phenomenal. Granted, this is not his greatest album, and I know it can be a hard listen to some old school fans, but the vocals alone is worth it. This is where he finally, I think, for me, acknowledges himself as not only a guitarist, but a singer. And that's an important thing for me. And I think that's what I remember. The album did, I had two Grammy nominations, I believe, as well. Next one is another album that was very divisive among fans, and this is Van Halen 3. Van Halen, was with had David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth left. Sammy Hagar took over. Sammy Hagar left. They did a greatest hits, and David Lee Roth came back, and everybody thought he's back, and he wasn't back for long. They just did it for the greatest hits. Gary Sharon comes in. Gary Sharon is known from the rock band Extreme, which their biggest hit was More Than Words. I am a fan of the band Extreme, and I think Gary Sharon is a good singer. I think Eddie Van Halen wanted to make a different album than a Van Halen album. I think Gary Sharon can write different tracks. He's a very versatile writer and singer. I think if Van Halen would have made a little bit more of a Van Halen esque album with the first one and then venture off, like this album is like, imagine Peter Gabriel fronting or writing songs for Van Halen. It's just there's something off on some of the tracks, but there are some good songs on here. Fire in the Hole, Without You. I still say if you listen to the guitar playing on here, Eddie is on fire because he found his muse with Gary, I think. Unfortunately, they did the wrong type of album to start off this Gary Sharon led unit. And unfortunately, we'll never get to hear more because unfortunately, Eddie Van Halen has passed away, as most, unless you're living under a rock, he has passed on. But there was potential there, and I wish they would have done another one and tried. But well, guess we'll never know. Next up, we have Walking into Clarksdale from Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. I think, like myself, we were so excited that these guys from Zeppelin were reuniting. I don't think it's the album we thought we were going to get. Everything, I think, was hoping for another Zozo, and it's not like that. I mean, although songs like Shine the Light and Most High are great, I think overall it's not the album we expected. So in the long run, it's good because it's unexpected. But I think once you hear Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, you're thinking Zeppelin, and you're thinking and you don't get that. Good album, but it's not the album we thought we were going to get. Next up is David Lee Roth with the DLR Band, or David Lee Roth Band. Came out in, I think, June 4th, June 9th, 1998. The album was made in 10 days. It's kind of like very reminiscent sounding of the first two or three Van Halen albums. And if you listen to Loud lately, Roth is releasing Van Halen songs live in the studio. This was, I think, was the starting point of that kind of process. John Five is their great guitarist. Love it. This is a great album. Underrated David Lee Roth solo album. I wish he would have released this in his heyday. This thing would have been humongous. After Eat 'Em and Smile, he should have released this album, and he would have a career. He would have a solo career that would match Van Halen, in my opinion. But that's not the case. Next up is Monster Magnet. They're known as stoner rockers, but there was a song called Space Lord that caught my attention, and I bought this album. Principal writer Dave Weindorf, if I'm saying his name correctly, locked himself up in a room in Las Vegas for 21 days and wrote 21 songs, and those songs became that album. And it kind of reminisces, it captures the glitz and the sleaze of Sun City. Like that album still do today. It's I think that's their biggest hit album for them. That's commercially accessible for everybody in the world, because a lot of their stuff is stoner rock. So if you're not into stoner rock, they're hard to get into. But this is the album that, if you're going to get into them, you should start off with. It's the most accessible, in my opinion. Next up is Kiss, Psycho Circus, September 22, 1998. The band had reunited with Ace and Peter, put on the makeup, and did a successful reunion tour and wanted to capitalize on that. So they decided to go and make an album. But like most fans know, Ace and Peter had very little say in the album. It was still Paul Stanley and the Gene Simmons Show. And for better or for worse, we got Psycho Circus. Initially, I was immensely disappointed with the album. After hearing albums like Revenge and Carnival of Souls, you saw where Kiss can go. And they kind of went backwards on that album. But now, today, listening to it, I do like the title track a lot. I did from the beginning, but it's not as good as, Revenge, in my opinion. The title track, Within, from Gene Simmons, You Wanted the Best, I think is catchy. Even Ace's song is pretty good, Into the Void. Peter's ballad, Finally Found My Way, sounds like a porn ballad gone wrong, if you get my drift. Flawed album, but a decent Kiss album. It debuted at number 3 in the Billboard charts, but it didn't do the numbers that we were expecting, and that kind of halted Kiss for a long time before they came out with Sonic Boom. But Psycho Circus, I've gone back to it now and can appreciate some of the tracks, and I was maybe a little hard on it when it first came out, but it's a decent album. Then it's John Mellencamp, his self-titled album that came out October 6, 1998. I think it was a debut album for a new company. I think it may be in Columbia, but I could be wrong. He had Izzy Stradlin on there. It's a good record. I think the big hit song was Your Life Is Now. I enjoyed that album. I think it's underrated from Mellencamp. Deserves to be listened to for sure. It's not a masterpiece, but it's a good album, and I think it deserves a listen, like I said. And those are my albums that I have in my collection that are celebrating 25 years in 2023. Let me know what you think. Have you got some in your collection that are going to be celebrating 25 years? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with my assessments of these albums? Love to hear your feedback on that. So hit the like button, subscribe. We would definitely love to hear from you. This is Steven from the Roundtable. Wishing you the very, very best for 2023. And I'm going to say something that some of my colleagues do not like, but I'm going to say it anyway. Live the dream. Can't help it saying it.